I'm Kitty.
And I'm Jennifer.
And we're the O'Neill sisters. And we're going to show you how to make a wirework necklace.
This necklace is like a beaded chain, but it's made entirely with wrapped loops.
And we're going to show you how to make wrapped loops. And we'll also show you how to add beads to your wire, how to make components out of them, how to link those components together in the chain, and then how to put on the clasp.
Remember, when you get started making your own wirework necklace, if you come across any questions, just leave us a comment and we'll reply. We're here to help.
Let's get started. For materials, you'll need jewelry wire, and this wire says right on it, ideal for wire wrapping, and that's what we're doing. So this is the right kind of wire. We're recommending that you get maybe a 24 gauge. You could do 22 or 26, but you want a gauge that is thinner, and that's 24 that's thinner, and it lets you wrap pretty easily. This is a good size for doing wire wrapping. We chose gold color to go with our beads, and we just got this at the craft store.
For beads, we selected 3 different types of beads just by going to the craft store and starting with picking out kind of a focal bead or main bead, and then from there we picked some accent beads. So we have 3 different types that we're going to use for our necklace in different sizes.
And then we picked out a clasp. This is a toggle clasp, and we just picked a metal color that matches our wire.
For tools, you need round nose pliers and wire cutters.
And then you're also going to need a tape measure and a Sharpie, and we'll show you what that's for later.
The first thing we want to do is talk about our overall design, and we think it's helpful to look at the design of other wirework necklaces to get some inspiration.
So these are all wirework, and that means that there is a bead or a couple beads on a piece of wire with wrapped loops at the end, and then those components are connected together to make kind of a beaded chain. And this first one that we're looking at, this one is all done with the same bead, repeated over and over, 1 bead per component. That's nice, it's simple, kind of elegant. This next one is done with 2 different kinds of beads, and they alternate. So it goes oval, rondel, and this is also very elegant. It's pretty that it's all the same color, but with alternating shapes. The third one is a lot like the first one, but it has these nice little crystals. So there's 3 beads per component, the large bead with 1 crystal on each side of the bead. I like how this adds some shine.
It's definitely pretty.
That's pretty.
This last necklace has a couple things going on. Toward the back of the necklace, toward the clasp, these are all the same component repeated over and over. Then as we come around toward the front of the necklace, the components change a little bit. And I think we'll take inspiration from that with the beads that we found, starting with our focal beads. What we can do is put those toward the front.
Love it.
And then maybe do these sort of toward the back.
Yeah, I like that idea. And then we can use these peachy little crystals like these crystals on this necklace. We can put 1 peachy crystal on each side of the focal bead, and maybe even 1 on each side of the turquoise beads.
Oh, I like that idea. We're ready to get started, so the first thing we're going to do is cut the beads off of their temporary strings.
Yes, we have some cups here to hold our crystals.
I'm going to cut it down at this end.
These are just temporarily strung. They're not meant to stay on those little pieces. It's kind of like a fishing line that they're on. Do this without having them fly all over the place.
Exactly.
There they are, beautiful.
And now we're ready to get started with our wrapped loops.
And this whole necklace is made up of wrapped loops. Every component has wrapped loops. So the first thing you want to do is cut a 3-inch piece of wire. And you don't have to be exact about the size of this, but you're going to be using 3-inch segments over and over again.
And it's good to have a little bit of that extra wire at both ends.
Yes.
Now we're going to make wrapped loops, but before we get started, we're going to show you the trick now with the Sharpie.
The Sharpie trick. The Sharpie trick is that you want to make a line on both jaws of your round nose pliers, and that's going to be your mark for where you want to make all of your loops. And that way all your loops will be the same size. If you migrate up and down on the pliers, they get narrow at the tip and wider at the bottom. You'll have some loops that are tiny and some that are fatter. It just won't look as nice on the necklace. It looks better if they're all the same size.
We like to do it. It makes it look kind of more professional.
Yes. And don't worry about marking up your round nose pliers. You can remove the Sharpie mark if you ever need to. Or if you want to do different size loops, you can remove it with a nail polish remover.
All right, so now we're ready to get started. So we've got our 3-inch piece of wire that we've already cut.
Yes.
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab at the mark that we just made, I'm going to grab about 1.5 inches down on our wire. And I'm going to start the wrapped loop by pulling the wire 90 degrees toward me. See our little 90-degree bend. Now I'm going to take the pliers and I'm going to reposition them so that they're holding the top part of that little bend. Again, I'm still at the mark that we made. And I'm going to take my the tail of my wire here and pull it around the top jaw to make the first half of my loop. Now I'm going to reposition the pliers so that the bottom jaw is in the loop.
At the mark.
At the mark, that's key. And I'm going to pull that wire, continue pulling it around. The bottom one wants to come with it to make a nice circle there, a nice loop.
Complete loop.
And you can see those lines are perpendicular. I'm going to take my wire now, take the pliers, and I'm going to grab across the loop, just like that. Take the tail and pull it around the neck 2 times.
So that's that same short piece that went around to make the loop. The tail of that piece is the one that you're going to wrap around 2 times to make your wrapped loop.
And now I'm going to take my wire cutters, and the wire cutters have a flush side and a pointed side.
It's like V-shaped.
Yes, exactly. I'm going to use the flush side against my work, and that's going to give me a nice straight cut and not a pointy cut.
That's important.
And then I'm going to straighten out my loop a little bit because I got a little bent here. You want the loop to be right at the top of your wraps.
Yes.
And actually I'll tuck that little end in a little bit there.
You can always, if you trim the wire and a little piece is sticking out, you can use your round nose pliers and just mush that end down a little bit.
Mush it back down.
Yeah. So there's your first wrapped loop. That looks fantastic.
Great. Yay, now we're ready to feed on our beads.
You will see many of these.
Yes, you will.
You'll practice them. So we're going to put on
do this, but want to do those
first. Do the crystal first.
Good.
Because our design is a crystal on each side of each bead, and we're going to do the focal beads at the bottom part of the necklace.
So we've got that, and then I'm going to put the other little peachy crystal on this end.
That looks so pretty.
Oh, I love it already.
Yes.
Now we're going to make another wrapped loop. So we're going to repeat what we just did. I'm going to grab the wire right above that bead there, and what I'm doing with this finger is sort of pushing the wrapped loop against the bead so it's nice and tight.
Yes.
So I'm going to grab the wire at my mark, make a 90-degree bend, reposition my pliers so that it's sort of holding the top part of that 90-degree bend, pull the wire around the top jaw, got part of a loop.
And she's hitting that mark each time.
Exactly. And I'm repositioning to the bottom jaw and then finishing that loop. Now I'm going to grab the loop across just like that with the pliers.
Yeah.
And I'm going to pull the tail around 2 times. And I might actually work with a slightly longer piece of wire for this next set of components.
That felt a little short.
That felt a little short, and it really helps to have a little wiggle room with the wire when you're doing wire work.
Yeah, don't skimp on using the wire. It's inexpensive, and it's easier to use longer pieces of wire to do your wire wraps.
That's right. Now I'm going to snip that.
Yeah.
There we go. And that's our first component.
Looks great. So now we're ready to make the second component, and again we're going to cut a piece of wire about 3 inches, a little bit longer I think this time because our beads are a little fat on the wire.
Yeah, we'll go a little bit longer.
Yeah.
There's our piece, and here's our component. We'll leave that there.
And we're going to make another wrap loop to start the next component, but this one we're going to make the loop and not the wraps yet.
So we're going to start by bending the wire 90 degrees, repositioning our pliers.
On the mark.
On the mark, good point. Pull the wire around the top jaw to make a partial loop. Then we're going to pull the wire around to finish the loop, but we're not going to close the loop yet. This is key.
So don't do the wraps here because you need to attach this component to the previous component.
So here's our previous component. Doesn't matter which side, we're going to just feed that on our loop.
And you just bypass where the 2 wires crisscross, you just go past that and nest that previous loop into the new loop.
Now I'm going to do what I did before, which is grab across the loop with my round nose pliers.
That's the loop she just made on the new component.
Exactly. And then I'm going to pull the tail around 2 times, just like we did before, to close the loop.
So it's really the same wrapped loop as before, but halfway through you attach it to the previous component. That's the only trick.
And now I'm going to trim the wire pretty close, but not so close that I cut my neck there.
Be careful not to cut into your project.
So now we have part of the next component attached, and we're going to feed on our beads like we did before.
Yes, so we're going to do the peachy crystal, and we've got 3 of the square focal beads and 4 of the round ones. So the next one will be a round one.
Okay, good. So there's our peachy crystal.
Yes.
We'll grab a round one, feed that on the end here, just like that.
That's
and then
cute.
another peachy crystal. I love
Yes.
this already. The colors are so pretty.
It's like mermaid colors.
It's like mermaid
We'll have to
colors.
give it like a mermaid name.
It's a mermaid necklace. There we go. So now we're going to do what we did before when we finished the second loop on our first component. I'm going to pull this tight up against this loop so that the beads are nice and tight in there.
You don't want extra space in there, they'll move around.
They will, and you don't, yeah, that looks yucky. So now we've got our pliers. We're going to grab right above that bead at the mark.
Yeah.
And do just what we did before. Bend the wire 90 degrees. Reposition the pliers.
Yep.
Pull the wire around the top jaw. Reposition the pliers again, and this time we'll finish the loop, grab across the loop, and close the loop to make it a wrapped loop.
So this component, we start with an open loop, attach it to the project, and finish with a closed loop. That'll give us a place to attach the next component.
Exactly. So now I'm going to trim, and we can get started. Again, I want to use the flush side of my cutters.
Yes.
And actually, I've got a little bit of a long neck here. I'm going to show you how to straighten that out. If I can cut this here. There we go. See how I've got a little bit of space there between my loops. I didn't get them super tight. That's totally fixable. Take your pliers and just sort of press the wires together. I'm actually going to do it against the beads.
Loops, you can kind of push them down against the beads.
There we go. That looks better already.
Yes.
And now we're ready to start our next component.
So we're just going to make all the components that use the focal beads, and we'll be ready to do the turquoise beads. So we've got all our focal beads done and made into components. They're all connected here. This will be the center of the necklace. And you can see we've got, each component has the focal bead with a crystal on each side. And now we just need to add in the turquoise beads that's going to extend the necklace up around.
So to do that, we're going to do what we did before, which is start by cutting about a little over 3-inch piece of wire. And then we're going to start by making a partial wrapped loop.
Yes.
So I'm going to come down about 1.5 inches, bend the wire 90 degrees, just like we did before. Reposition the pliers, pull the wire around, and then finish the loop, but we're not going to wrap the loop yet. We're just going to finish the loop like we did when we were adding our other components.
Because this component needs to be attached to our previous work.
So we're going to attach it just like that. Nestle that into our new little loop, partial loop that we have there. Now I'm going to, whoops, wrong tool. Don't use the snips. I'm going to use my round nose pliers to grab that loop across and then pull the tail around the neck 2 times.
Just like before.
Just like that.
So you get really good at making wrapped loops when you make a few of these necklaces because it's a lot of practice. And practice is what makes perfect, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So let me throw this out of our way here. So now that's attached and we're ready to add on our beads.
So this is a new component. This one's going to be a little bit different.
Thank you.
This one is the same peachy crystal.
If I can find where the hole is.
Yes.
That's always the hardest part.
And then this pretty little aqua turquoise mermaid pearl bead.
It's really pretty. It's got like the AB finish.
Yeah, it's got a little oil slick kind of shiny
I can't find
finish.
the hole there. There it is.
There it is. And then one more peach.
Peachy crystal.
Peachy crystal. And these colors are just so pretty.
Really are.
Very summery.
I love them together.
Yeah.
So there we go. So now we're going to finish our component by making our second wrapped loop.
Yes.
Just like we did before. Grabbing the wire, 90 degrees, rotate and reposition.
On the mark.
On the mark, pull the wire around to make a partial loop.
Yep.
Grab onto the loop with our bottom jaw, pull the wire around, and now I'm going to grab that across the loop and I'm going to wrap the loop 2 times.
So again, the beginning part of the component, you make the loop and attach it, then do the wraps. The second part of the component, you make a complete wrapped loop so that you'll have something to attach your next component to.
Exactly. Now I'm going to trim.
So we're just going to keep going in this way, adding these components to both sides of the necklace. So we've added more of the turquoise components to our necklace, and we have 6 more on each side of the necklace. It's looking really nice.
Isn't it? It's so pretty.
And it's getting close to being long enough. So we got out our tape measure and measured the length. And we want to stop short of how long we want the necklace to be because we still need to add the clasp. So we're at about, can you see that? 17.
Yep.
We're at about 17 inches, and that means that we have room to add the clasp, and that includes adding 2 more components because the last component on each side is going to include the clasp.
This is important. So we are going to do what we've been doing all along, cut our wire about 3.5 inches long, and we're going to do a partial loop here, just like we did when we added our last component.
Yes.
So we're going to make the 90-degree angle, rotate the pliers, and then pull the wire around the top jaw.
Yep.
Reposition the pliers to the bottom jaw, pull the loop around, but we're not going to close this loop yet because we want to add on our necklace.
Yes. This is just the same as all the other components you added.
There we go. We're going to nestle that in, loop and loop.
Loop and loop.
Loop and loop.
They're holding hands.
There we go. Oh, that's cute. So there's that. Oh, it popped right up again.
They stopped holding. Okay, now.
Yeah, now they're holding hands. Okay, and now I'm going to grab across the loop with my pliers, pull the tail around
Yes.
twice,
Perfect.
and now I'm going to trim. Great. Let me get that out of
And
the
now
line.
this is a component just like the other ones, so we're going to put on a crystal.
Great. Here's our crystal. Get it on there. It's hard to see where the hole is. There we go.
And the little aqua glass bead.
It's so pretty. I love the finish on that.
It's very pretty. And then one more crystal, peachy crystal. That's
Okay,
nice.
looks great. And now what we're going to do is do another partial loop.
So on all the other components, you made a finished loop after your beads. This time you're going to make the loop, but you're not going to do the wraps.
So we're going to do what we just did. Whoops, I slipped off my mark there. I don't want to lose my mark because I want this to be the same size.
Right.
So I've got my partial loop. Not going to close it because I want to put on the clasp.
Yes.
So we've got one side of our toggle clasp here. And we're just going to feed that on and nestle that into our loop. Like that.
Yep.
Grab onto the loop just like we've been doing. And do 2 wraps.
Look at that. So easy to put a clasp on a wirework project.
It really is. And then we're going to trim.
We have half the clasp on.
How wonderful. Look at
Yes.
that. So now we're ready to do the other side.
Yep.
And to do that, we're going to just repeat those same steps. Here's our wire. I'm going to grab at my little mark, 90-degree bend, reposition the pliers, and wrap across that top.
She's letting the shape of the pliers make the loop.
That's the key.
It's the shape of a loop. So you just bend the wire around that shape to make your round loop.
Let it do the work. So there's our partial loop.
Yes.
I want to grab the other end of our necklace and feed that on. Nestle it in there.
Yep.
And now we're ready to close this loop. 1 wrap, 2 wraps.
Right.
That. And we'll trim. Always have to reposition these too so that that flush side is toward the work.
Nice flat cut. And then here is a peachy crystal for our last component.
And you need to add these, the whole component before you put on the clasp because otherwise you just end up with 2 wrap loops on either side of the clasp.
And then no way to attach your clasp.
And yeah, it's not going to work. So it's important not to add that last component until you're ready to include half the toggle or
Yes.
whatever your clasp is that you're using. There we go. So there are our beads on there and we're ready to make our partial loop.
Yay.
Yeah, we're almost done. Let me get it nice and tight down there. Bend the wire. Wrap it around. You really do get good and quick at this. But we don't want to close that yet, our little partial loop, because we want to add the other half of our toggle. I left this piece a little bit long. That's all right. You'll find a length that works well for you
Yes.
when you start getting in the groove of this. I'm going to grab across the loop just like I did before and wrap it twice.
It's really just one skill, making wrap loops.
It really is.
And once you learn to make the wrap loops, you can make this necklace as long, you could make it a mile long.
You
You
absolutely
just keep
could.
adding components. You can make bracelets this way. You can make short, medium, and long necklaces. It's really a great technique. Look at
And
that.
there we have our beautiful necklace. Let me close the toggle there. And our beautiful toggle clasp.
Beautiful.
Love it.
Wow, the necklace turned out so pretty.
And it really is just one technique, making wrapped loops.
We hope you have fun making your own Wirework necklace.